Welcome to the Empowered Money Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Franks, and today I'm going to be reviewing one of my favorite books. Dare I say the second best financial book written of all time. The first, obviously, being Empowered Money, but this is a book called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. He's a former columnist for the Motley Fool and the Wall Street Journal here. And before I begin, I just want to say, the insights I share reflect my personal perspective and are intended for educational and commentary purposes under the fair use policies here. So any short excerpts I use will be properly attributed to the author. Podcast is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the author or the publisher. But I do recommend, if today's discussion sparks your interest, I encourage you to read the full book here to gain the complete insight directly from the source. So I always recommend that if you enjoy this podcast, go buy the book and read it, because it's not, you can go get summary notes from anywhere. It's not about the summary. It's about the meditation, the time that you take to think through the concepts that we're about to talk today, so that you have the time to think and decide how you can use those in your own life here. So today, what I'm going to be going over are my biggest takeaways from this book. If you like this podcast, I highly recommend just go ahead and buy the book or buy the Audible and dive on in, right? So let's do just that. Let's dive on in and just hit these top ideas here. So number one, behavior over knowledge. Behavior over knowledge every single day, right? Building wealth has little to do with how much you know and everything to do with how you behave. And this is why I feel like financial advisors are not going to go the way of the dodo bird when AI gets here, right? Because AI, well, let me just say this. Some financial advisors are only doing investments. And I do think that they are really going to be impacted by AI, particularly as the older generation phases out here and younger generations start managing that money right there. Now, that being said, though, what I like about what I do is that I get to add a little bit of accountability here. I get to spread around a little bit of accountability here, and we get to affect human behavior, right? I think it's so important to understand that for hundreds of thousands of years, we were cavemen who only cared about what we were having for dinner that night. That's it, right? What were we going to eat next? And now all of a sudden, and it was only like early 1900s, where our life expectancy as a human race was above age 65. And now all of a sudden, this was not that long ago. Now all of a sudden, we are supposed to plan for retirement between age 65 to 90, which is so far in the future. So we have to understand that our human nature is not built for this. We're rather new at this. And that's where a good financial advisor comes in, helps you see that vision, helps you hold you accountable for that, right? Here's another point from the book. You can outsource knowledge, which means you can hire financial advisors, you can read books, but you can't outsource your own behavior, right? So you can watch people working out all the time, right? You can watch it all the time. You can even pay for a gym membership, right? But until you get in there and you do the work, okay, you can't outsource that work, right? So what I do like about this is, yes, you can hire a financial advisor and they are going to hold you accountable, right? And that goes a long way. But at the end of the day, you've got to do the work on this, right? There's a couple of things that you cannot outsource. Your health, right? And your wealth. Those two things you have to be in control of. Yes, you can say, oh, my money manager does this, he does that, right? You have got to be the one driving the ship here. It's got to be your plan, not your financial advisor's plan. Your plan that you understand, and you understand why you're doing what you're doing in order to get you to where you want to go quicker than you otherwise would. Okay. So one more time about human behavior, a point that it makes: how you behave is more important than what you know. The reason I do this podcast, the reason I wrote this book, is I gave away 15 years of learning in my book, Empowered Money, for $20, right? This is typically stuff that I charge thousands of dollars to do for people, right? But I gave it away for $20. Why did I do that? Because I know that information is cheap. And guess what? It's getting cheaper, right? The information age has quickly become the over-information age, and sometimes even the misinformation age, right? So it's not about the knowledge out there. It's about the questions you ask and the actions you take. I heard somebody famous say this. It was, hey, knowledge is cheap. Being a genius is no more about what you know. It's more about the questions that you ask. And I thought that was awesome. The problem is sometimes we don't know which questions to ask. And once again, that's where a financial advisor can really help come in and help you ask those tough questions that you may not have thought of, help you create decision centers, frameworks to make decisions and help you act on those decisions, right? So that is on the human behavior side. Moving on to the next topic here is understanding that we all have different experiences. Okay. We all are approaching money differently based on our experiences. So let's talk about some things that I run into, which is how people, the relationship with money is greatly dictated with how they grew up with money, right? Some of my clients had no money at all. And that is greatly reflected in the way that they handle their money today. Okay. Some of my clients grew up with money, right? And the way that they view money is so much, maybe even, I wouldn't even say healthier, right? It's just so different than that person that didn't have money. And then there was somebody who I think I would fall into this category that, was provided a really good head start here, but not necessarily a trust fund baby, right? So somewhere right in the middle on that, where I have a healthy respect for money, but I also do think in my mind that it is finite. And I don't know if that's a great thing to think. Sometimes we want to have abundance mentality here, and I've got to check myself on that sometimes. But everybody has had a different experience with money. So whenever you're talking with money to somebody and they're making a decision that you just don't understand, you have to understand that they're coming from a framework that and a foundation that you will never get. Right. And so just keep that in mind. Now, here's another thing. Let's talk about timeframes. Okay. Let's say that you were 40 in the '08 financial crisis and your 401k went down to half. You lost your job for 4 years. You had to sell out of your 401k and you had to start back with nothing at 45. Okay. You're probably going to look at the markets and the economy a little bit different than I did when I was in my junior year of college when the financial crisis hit. Now, I had trouble finding a job, but think about my generation is that we found a job and we started saving and investing money at the bottom. And unless you're 40, or for almost everybody under 40, besides 2022, you've never really experienced a down market. So if you're my generation, millennial generation, next thing you know, you're looking at this, you might be thinking stocks only go up. Now, here I am saying this in September 22nd of 2025, and who knows what will happen tomorrow. But I guarantee you stocks don't just go up, right? But a younger person is going to be affected by the way that they think about stocks and bonds and risk tolerance based off of what they have witnessed during their working careers, as opposed to somebody in the previous generation or their parents' generation who saw the financial crisis almost take out our country. It was a big crisis, right? So those two things and how we experience them really are going to affect the way that we see and the relationship we have with money here. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about being a caveman and hundreds of thousands of years of genetics here of evolution, training us just to think about what we're going to eat that night. But let's talk just a little bit about retirement. In general, retirement is a relatively new concept. Before World War II, most people just worked till they died. In almost every single country, people just kind of work till they die. Retirement is not a right, it is a privilege. It is something new. Some people would argue it's not even good for us. A lot of people would say people retire and they start to die. And sure, part of that is that they're 65, 67, you name it. But if you ever heard the analogy of the old football coaches, when somebody coaches football for a long time and then they go off and they retire and they die in the next couple of years, right? Because they lose that zest, they lose that meaning, that reason to get out of bed, right? There's something to that. And so when you retire, if you're listening to this and you're about to retire, I want to be clear, your job's not done. Yes, you're retiring, but you have a new job. Number one, just going back to what I said earlier. Number one, take care of your health. Okay. One of the great quotes, there was a book where I read this and it said, if you are healthy, you've got a million goals and dreams. If you are unhealthy and or in pain, you have one goal, one dream, just to get back to being healthy. Right. So when we retire, we got to take care of our health, number one. And then number two, we got to watch our wealth, right? Because we are now swimming in the deep end of finances. And if we screw up there, hopefully you get a lifeguard like a financial advisor to help you on that. But if we screw up there, it could be problematic, right? That being said, retirement is a new concept, only about 2 generations old here. Most people, most cultures just work until they die. So we're still kind of young at retirement planning here. Now, what I would tell everybody is when you are doing financial planning, there's really 2 levers that we could pull. We can spend less and retire earlier, or we can spend more and retire later. Now, most people do try to opt for the first one. Hey, let's spend less, let's retire. We want to retire, retire, retire. And that is particularly within the baby boomer generation been very popular. I do feel like the younger generations are like, you know what, let's live now. I want to take that trip to Spain and hike the El Camino now. I heard this phrase the other day, pre-knees. You got pre-knees and post-knees. What trips are you going to take while you still have good knees? What trips are you going to take when you don't have good knees, right? Maybe we save those cruise ships and that train ride for post-knees, and we do this biking trip pre-knees, right? So if it comes down to living life more now but retiring at a later date, I'm going to recommend that people choose that a lot more than, hey, let's sacrifice, 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 and then retire at 60. Because even though life expectancy continues to grow higher, the quality of life is right around age 75, right? So realistically, we retire at 65. We have 10 years. We call those the go-go years, right? The go-go years. We're going to go do things, be things, have things, right? Experience things. And then all of a sudden, it's going to slow down to the slow-go years. Hey, we're gonna really settle in. We're going to become grandparents. We're going to spend a lot of time with family. And unfortunately, we have the no-go years that follow just after, right? So 65 to 75 are the go-go years, then 75 to 80 are the slow-go years, and 80 to 90 are the no-go years. Once again, if you're depressed, you should be. You need to know what's coming. If you are waiting to live life, in my opinion, that's a mistake, right? We want to identify these goals, these dreams that you have. We want to put them down on paper. We want to write down a number of how much they're going to cost. And we want to start proactively saving towards that so that we can get through our bucket list while we still have income streams and while we're still young and while we still have good knees, right? Then when we retire, 60, 65, let's say we retire at 70 because we're out busy doing things, right? Well, if we retire at 70, that means our Social Security is going to be a lot more, right? It's going to allow our other investments to grow a lot longer, right? But hopefully we retire at 70 and maybe we've already done all of our traveling. How cool would that be? And say, you know what? I've been around the world. I've seen the things I want to do, right? I hiked El Camino when I had good knees, right? And now all of a sudden we can go and just be really good family members, grandparents, because I tell you, we work with a lot of elderly people. There is no trip that is nearly as fun as being able to see your grandkids. That's just the joy of life. They call it the dessert of life there, right? It's grandkids, right? So you want to make certain that you're not missing out on that. So long story short, we're still getting better at this retirement planning. Yes, I want you to be financially independent, but we got to balance living life now versus living life in the future, right? And we can do both, right? So this book also does a really good job of talking about luck. Sometimes there is a lot of luck and success. I think we in America, where like people create their own luck, right? And if something bad happens, this sounds awful, but if something bad happens, we try to find the root cause. Okay. We believe in cause and effect so much. And we say, oh, they went bankrupt. Well, they should have done this or that. It even goes to health, right? Oh, they got XYZ disease. Well, they should have done this instead, right? And it's bad that we do that. It's not fair. But the truth is that there is a lot of luck and success. There is. And we need to practice being grateful for that success. I remember my career, I'm doing this podcast right here in front of you because of one client early on in my career launched it. Okay. And it was lucky that I got it. I was not good enough to land that account. It was luck, right? And that luck spawned a lot of success following here. And I've got a lot of business owners that have really good businesses. All of a sudden the business goes down and a lot of times it's bad luck, right? All of a sudden somebody gets sued. It wasn't really their fault. Somebody slips and falls. It's a huge distraction, right? Next thing you know, your biggest client leaves you. This stuff happens, y'all. This happens. So I think we need to understand that there's some luck in here. And it's not just cause and effect. We like to see world as a black and white world where if you do this, if you get this, it's because you did this, right? Well, sometimes there's some luck that are involved, and this book does a really good job of talking about those odds. As a matter of fact, the best example it gives here is some guy you might have heard of him named Bill Gates, okay? Bill Gates attended one of the only high schools in America that had a computer in the 1960s, right? If he had not gone to that high school, we may not know who he is, right? So yes, is he exceptionally brilliant? You got it. Did he work his butt off? Yes, he did, right? But did he get lucky along the way? You betcha, right? You betcha. Now, I am of the belief that the harder you work, the luckier you get. I do believe that. I've seen that in my own life here. And in general, I do believe in the general law of attraction of if we build it, they will come. If we build a concept in our mind, what we need to do, the universe will provide. The universe will provide us what we need to be able to build that, right? So I am a believer of that. But what does the hard work do? It gets you in position so that when the good luck happens, you're ready to act on it. It gets you prepared so that when you see a victory, you're able to take it, right? That is what that hard work does there. It just helps you maximize the luck that you're going to get, right? Maybe minimize the bad luck that you're going to get as well. Another thing that this says, and I would say, man, this is so important in today's world, beware of extremes, okay? Be careful about idolizing or imitating extreme examples of billionaire CEOs, right? You can't be them, guys. You're not them. They're built different. Right? But guess what? They put their pants on one day at a time like you. Guess what? They start out, most of them, where you are. Right. So, the more extreme the outcome, the less likely you can replicate this. But this is a problem with our world right now, our Instagrammable real world or TikTok world, is that the only people getting the likes are the ones that are doing something so drastically different. Okay. And so that's the ones that are hitting our algorithms are the people who are so drastically different. Okay. And so in the financial world, I like to say we've got our real estate bros, our crypto hoes, and our stock junkies. Okay. Talking about extremes, right? If you're a real estate bro, you almost only see things through a real estate lens. If you love crypto, you must only see it through a crypto lens. If you love stocks, you must only see it through a stock lens, right? Why do we have to be so extreme here? Why can't we do all three, right? And by the way, if you've done all three, you've won. If you've done one of the three, you've won, right? Everything's a winner right now, right? But my thing is, hey, I don't know who's going to win in the future. I do not know the future of crypto. I don't think anybody really does. People have theories and thoughts, right, and hopes there. I don't think anybody really does, right? Same exact thing with the stock market. Same exact thing right now with the real estate market. So the idea is, hey, why don't we hedge our bets here a little bit? Why don't we not be so extreme here? Why don't we make traction in a lot of areas? So we got to be aware of extremes here with that. Okay, and then it talks about risk, luck, and balance here. So nothing is ever as good as it seems, and it's never as bad as it feels, right? So it's never as good as it seems. It's never as bad as it feels. So whenever times are going good, I always get a little nervous. I look around me, so look behind me, say, okay, what's about to happen here, right? And then when things are really, really bad, I do need to just zoom out. I need to zoom out and say, okay, what the heck is going on here? How bad is it? And oftentimes I've actually put it out worse in my mind than it truly is, right? So one of my favorite chapters was chapter 3. It really hit home. It talked about this idea of having enough here. So having enough, it is a virtue here. It says don't risk what you already have for what you don't have and you don't need. A lot of times people get a little greedy with things and get risky here. Capitalism in general creates wealth, but it also creates envy. And the only way to win this battle of social comparison is to stop playing the game of social comparison. Comparison is the thief of all joy is another quote that I know that's been a huge thing in my life. When I started my career, I was in a very competitive world. And even though I was doing good, there was always somebody doing better. And I was always getting down on myself. It actually it hurt. Competing against these people who are constantly losing, and just beating myself up on that did not help, right? Because we do better when we have confidence and we have momentum, right? When we're comparing ourselves to other people that, once again, have different money experiences, like we talked about earlier, it's going to hurt. And there's always going to be another level. I hate to tell you, no matter how much money you have, there's always, always, always another level. Hey, you get a private plane? Sure, that's great, but it's not a private jet. You go on a private plane one time, you realize, oh, this is not a jet. This goes much slower here. I can't land in that stormy weather over there because I'm in a plane. If I was in a jet, I could land in there, right? Yeah, you go on a boat, and guess what? You're gonna notice every other boat that's a little bit bigger than yours. It's just, I don't know why we're wired that way. It's probably evolutionary to be competitive, to always be striving for something we don't have, but it's ridiculous. So we just need to stop. We need to really practice having enough. And they give a great example in this book. There was an author that was talking to a hedge fund capitalist in this book, and the hedge fund capitalist was talking about everything that he has. And the author looked at him, and it was either author or painter, and he goes, but you know what I have that you will never have? The guy goes, what? He goes, enough. I have enough, and you will never have that. Right? And man, that just hit me like a ton of bricks there. Because I feel like I catch myself scrolling on Zillow all the time, looking at these big homes. And the truth is, we were so daggum happy in the house that we were at. I'm not even in the market for a new home, yet I'm looking at other people's homes. How weird is that, right? And so, there's a lot in this book about just being grateful and practicing presence and practicing having enough. And I would say this, out of all the planning that we've done, it's not about who makes the most. It's about who has the most simple life that tends to create the most wealth. And I remember this person never became a client, unfortunately, but I remember I went to their house and this person had saved up about $4 million and he had never made over $100,000 in a single year. That was amazing to me. He had never made over $100,000 in a single year, and he had over $4 million. Wow, that's so cool. How did he do that? By just having enough, right? He just had enough on there. Right. So, anyways, really cool concepts there. Chapter 4 talks about time and compounding interest. I thought this was so cool. So, Warren Buffett, and this might be just a little bit outdated, but Warren Buffett at the time of this book was worth about $84.5 billion. Okay. And what's cool about that is that 81.5 billion of that came after age 65. Okay. So everybody thinks that the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett's one of the best investors in the world. There have been so many people that have beat him on a rate of return perspective. Here's where Warren Buffett has, has beaten everybody. He's lived really long. He has lived really freaking long, and he stayed in the game of investing. And when you look at the massive amount of wealth he bought, he built it after most people retire. Right. So I'm not saying don't retire. I'm just saying that compounding interest happens at the end. It happens at a little bit at the beginning. So I like to use the penny a day approach. I used to do career day at this elementary school, and I'd bring in $1 and I'd say, hey, whoever gets this right is going to get this $1. And ask the question, hey, if you had a penny at the beginning of a day that doubled every single day for a 30-day month, how much would it be at the end of the 30 days? And so 1 penny becomes 2, becomes 4, becomes 8, becomes 16, becomes 32, becomes 64, so on, so forth. All right. And keeps on going, right? Well, at the end of the 30 days, you end up with $10.5 million. Okay. Now, if you weren't even close on that, I don't know who would be unless you've heard this. What was funny is that I went to career day twice, and the first day, nobody even had a clue. The second year, they actually guessed it, and they took my $1 from me. It's like, wow, how did you guys get that? They came prepared, right? So anyways, just know that compounding interest is really slow in the beginning, and it's really exciting at the end here. This talks a little bit about just running your own race, or as they say, playing your own game. Living in bubbles ruins lives. You got to get outside of our bubble. Few things matter more than knowing your time horizon. Shut the front door. This is so important. Okay. When we're talking about risk tolerance, when I use the term risk tolerance, almost always people associate that with their ability to tolerate risk, their emotional ability, what they feel about risk. And that's the exact wrong thing that we need to be doing here. We need to be removing your emotions from the decision making. We need to be looking at your time horizon here. And I don't care how conservative you are. If you have a long time horizon, we need to be aggressive. Okay. Now, listen, not all accounts are created equally. This means that you should have different risk tolerances for different accounts that you have. The longer term accounts, maybe your retirement accounts, we need to be very aggressive there. Your shorter term, your cash, we need to be super conservative. And then somewhere in the middle, we need to be somewhere in the middle on the risk tolerance, right? But we need to stop letting our emotions judge the risk tolerance that we're going to have in these accounts and start allowing our time horizon. How much time do we have? Let that dictate how aggressive we want to be there. This book talks a little bit about the seduction of pessimism. I don't know if I even need to talk about this. Just turn on the TV, right? Bad news sells. People love hearing it. Misery loves company here. But I want to tell you this. Optimism wins at the end of the day, particularly when it comes to money. So let's take 2010, for instance. We had the financial crisis of 2008. There was a lot of people that claimed that they sold stocks right before the bubble burst in '08. And they do so really, really proudly and as if they were smarter than everybody else, right? The problem that I found is that these same people who got out in '07, '06, '07, before the crash of '08. They never got back in. A lot of them never got back in. So what happened after the '08 financial crisis? A couple years of staggering right there. And the next thing you know, beyond 2011, all of a sudden the markets start to pick back up and it goes on one of the longest and greatest bull runs in American history, right? And a lot of people missed that. Why? Because they were so pessimistic that they got out and they thought that the markets were just going to continue to go down. And when they start going up, they're like, oh, this is an aberration that's going to correct again. And guess what? It did not, right? So what do you get if you're super pessimistic? Well, you get to tell people I told you so every now and then. Okay. Oh, markets crash. Told you it was going to happen. Glad I kept that money in cash and didn't have it grow in the last 15 years. Right. So, long story short, when it comes to your financial planning, of course, we need to worry about things. Of course, we need to have to plan when things go sideways because they do. Right. But in general, we have to understand we are evolutionary geared to worry about bad things that can happen and to cling on to bad news, and that can really, really, really cause us not to act. So why do we have this? Well, we need to be worried, 1,000 years ago, we need to be worried if there was a tiger around the corner. Hey, if you live in India and you're dirt poor, you might still need to worry about that, right? But here's the deal. In today's world, particularly in America, we don't have tigers in America, right? And we did, we'd have them controlled and they're, or whatever, right? So when we look at our lives in America and what risk we actually have, right? There's just not that bad. But what do we do? Well, we find risk and we make them bigger than they should be. That's what we tend to do. So we find things that shouldn't be a big deal and we turn them into a massive deal, right? So pessimism often extrapolates today's problems without accounting for innovation or adaptation, right? I was studying economics in college and they actually equated, overpopulation to this and saying, hey, people had a lot of fear of overpopulation, but what they don't know is, hey, one day we're going to have vertical gardens that are growing our food. And guess what we have today? We have vertical gardens that are growing our food. In the '70s, they were running about us running out of oil. But what happened? Well, all of our engines got a lot more efficient, right? So we cannot forget that we evolve in our ideas, and particularly technology evolves to help fill those needs. So yes, things that are worrisome today, don't forget that a lot of times technology and innovation and adaptation is going to help us attack those, right? Economic reality here, extremely good or bad times rarely last. Okay. Supply and demand adjust in unpredictable ways. So whether you think it's really good or really bad, just know that, hey, this too shall pass on here. And when it's really good, we need to make plans for it to be really bad. When it's really bad, we need to make plans to be really good. Warren Buffett used to say that the stock market was the only place that would have a sale and people would run away from it, right? So in really bad times, this is that they rarely last. This is when we need to be running into the market. Really good times rarely last. This is where we need to be planning for the really bad times. Okay. All right. Practical wisdom for investors. The best universal guide to making financial decisions is, will this help me sleep at night? I'm going to push back on this one just a little bit. Here, I think that the author actually shows I believe he allows his conservative biases to come into play right here. Okay, will this help me sleep at night? You know what helps me sleep at night is the amount of money in my bank account, right? When I open my bank app and I see the amount of money that's in there, that helps me sleep at night. When that gets lower, I don't sleep as well. And that's by design. I know that my biggest risk is my own motivation to get out of bed and go work hard. It just is. It always has been, right? So I've developed ways of getting money out of my bank account and into the markets and into investments and in places that I really don't want to touch. I can if I have to, but I don't want to, right? So that I'm constantly motivated to look at my expenses, to monitor my expenses, and also drive revenue here, right? So when he asked, hey, will this help me sleep at night? I don't think that is the best question to ask, because if you ask that question to every financial decision, more than likely the answer is no. This is not going to help me sleep better at night. I don't need to go start this business. I don't need to go invest this money. I don't need to go buy that stock. I don't need to go get that crypto. I would say a better question to help guide a decision is, what would I regret more? Would I regret buying $100,000 of Bitcoin and it going 90% down? Or I would regret not buying $100,000 and it goes 90% up, right? So it's the same percentages, right? Whether it goes to 100, from 100 to 190, or from 100 to 10,000, right? Both $90,000 swings here. Which one would you regret more? Losing that money or not taking a chance to get more money, right? And this is really how I decide on which financial decisions I go with, because some decisions I make have much more upside than others. Some of them have with a lot higher downside, and some are a little bit safer, right? So I've got to ask, hey, would I regret doing this and it not going well, or more than I would regret not doing this and it being something that could change the lives of multiple generations to come here, right? So will this help me sleep at night? I'm just going to have to disagree with the author on this one and say, if you ask that question to your financial decision making, you're not going to do anything except keep money in cash, most likely, right? But what will you regret more? Doing something that's screwing up, or not doing it and it potentially changing your life, right? And being a life-changing miss. You're going to have to apply that to each decision. Right. This talks about the single most important thing you can do as an investor is increase your time horizon. I think that's really cool, right? Remember, the more aggressive, the longer the time horizon, the more aggressive we can be. Compounding interest happens at the end, right? It happens throughout, but it happens the most at the end. Okay. The longer we can stay aggressive in there, the better off we are. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to work till age 70, though. We can design a retirement plan where we have different buckets of money. Short term for the next 2-3 years, long term for 10 years plus, mid-term for in between. And what that will do is that'll allow us to be super aggressive, continue to be aggressive with our longer term assets to really benefit from that compounding interest, right? So the most powerful thing you can do, the author says, is increase your time horizon here. All right, here's what's so cool. Okay, use money as a tool to gain control over your time. Financial freedom means doing what you want, when you want, with whom you want, for as long as you want. If you don't get anything from this podcast, congratulations on staying until the end here, because this is the biggest point. Use money as a tool to gain control over your time. Financial freedom means doing what you want, when you want, with whom you want, for as long as you want. Okay? Money is a tool. It always has been. Right? We believe that we want to start out with a vision of what our life wants to look like, and then reverse engineer a financial plan to help people live that. Okay. We believe that each of us live two lives, the life we're currently living and the unlived life within. Okay. In between those two is a really good financial plan, really well thought out, designed, and executed financial plan. Okay. So we got to understand that money is a tool that allows us to buy freedom. Okay, that's what this is about more than anything, right? Charlie Munger's famous quote, "I did not intend to get rich. I just wanted to get independent" here. Okay. All right. So guys, thanks so much for listening to this. Whether I did a good job, bad job, I don't know, right? But this is just an idea of what this book is about, why I liked it. I didn't say this at the beginning, but I actually got turned on this book by a Huberman podcast. I do not listen to Huberman a ton, but I saw that this one was on money and finances, and I was in the gym working out, and I pressed play, and next thing you know, I'm just taking notes left and right on this thing. So anyways, if you wanted to learn more, I would recommend listening to that podcast with the author. And then if you really like that, obviously go ahead and get this book, man. It is gold. He does such a good job of laying this out in a way that makes sense to you. And I think it's an absolute must read for anybody who is looking to improve their financial planning.